Welcome to Stand Up for Doctors. I'm your host, Kim Downey. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to welcome Dr. Arpita Gupta DePalma and Dr. Susan Vogler. Thanks for joining us today, Arpita and Susan.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to meet you both.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm very happy to have you. And I usually start by saying how we met. And Arpita, you're one of only a very small handful of physicians that I communicated with. I call it BLI, before LinkedIn. And you had recently started your Doctors Living Deliberately podcast with Dr. Michael Hirsch a year ago, March. And I sent you a Facebook message congratulating you. And then the following month, when Michael connected me on LinkedIn, you were the first doctor I reached out to because I didn't know any other doctors. So you have the distinction of being my second doctor connection, and now it's like over 6,000. So you'll always be the second one.
So amazing that your network grew so huge so quickly. I remember when you reached out to me actually with the text message, I was a little bit like hesitant and apprehensive because I was like, I don't know who this is. And then I found out that you were linked to Michael Hirsch, and I was like, I don't want to be overstepping any bounds whatsoever. It's just kind of interesting how it evolved. And you were just so generous and kind and just gushing with just positive vibes and words. So I really appreciated that too. So, but it was a pleasure to get to meet you and talk to you that way.
Oh, well, thank you. I had never heard your perspective, so that's kind of cool. And then Susan, let's see how we met. Well, you reached out to me last year on November 4th, and we went back and forth, and we had a phone conversation because I think you were having some Zoom issues or something like that. And then we just kept going, and we've been, commenting on each other's posts and such. So by way of more formal introduction, Dr. Arpita Gupta DePalma is a wife, mother, pediatrician, CEO, entrepreneur, COO, and trauma-informed advanced certified mindset coach for women physicians and professionals who enjoys empowering powerful women. And Dr. Susan Vogler is an OBGYN and Menopause Society certified practitioner. And if you want to speak to that at all during our conversation, before you, I had never actually heard of such a thing. And who has 20 years of diverse experience. And Susan's current passion is for delivering quality service and leadership that goes beyond organizational expectations. And I had thought to pair the two of you. I thought it would be fun, considering Susan used to deliver babies and Arpita used to take care of them. And also that Arpita pivoted from clinical medicine some years ago, while in recent months, Susan has been navigating the transition to a non-clinical role. And today we'll be talking about Susan's experience logistically and emotionally as she has sought to navigate non-clinical opportunities over the past year, and wisdom from Arpita, who pivoted from clinical work a while back and now supports women in whatever they're seeking for their career and their life, including how that can involve staying in medicine in various capacities. And I always like to include that because doctors can do whatever they want, and we need doctors. So it's all right. It's all true at the same time. So I'd like to ask you each what you'd most like our audience to know about you as we begin our conversation. Arpita, would you like to go first?
Well, that was a lovely introduction. It was a definite mouthful for both of us, I think. I appreciate that. I think the first thing I would just start out with, and it's so funny that you said this, like just coaching women, it's still very apparent. I have a very new client that today was her first session that I just started with. And there's just so much of what we have tied as our worth to what we do. And primarily when we're physicians, like the fact that we are doctoring and practicing clinically, that has really become very ingrained in a lot of people over the years. And I find it, it's interesting. I find it in all different people, but a lot of the people also have like the first generation immigrants that have come to the US or first generation born in the US, having that kind of burden on top of them from what their parents and their ancestors have kind of built these expectations of them. But also just, when we start to realize that we've put so much of our value on what we do and what we create, and also starting to notice that that's not really valid and true, like that is the work. And that's what's been really, really hard to kind of get people to start to just have the awareness around. So that was my own personal transformation, that I didn't even realize that I had that issue going
Mhm.
on. I left clinical medicine, and it kind of unveiled itself years later as a roaring beast. And I can get into that later if you want, but it can show up in so many different ways that we're not even really aware of. So
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that, because parts of this we've touched on in different episodes, but not all of it. And that's what I say over and over again. Every time a doctor shares their story, another doctor feels less alone. So the more people we have sharing, the different variations, it makes quite a big impact. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that. And Susan, what would you like us to know about you?
Well, besides being OBGYN with 20 years of experience in clinical medicine, I am embarking on a journey of securing non-clinical work, which has been really an enlightening experience in and of itself so far. It's been wonderful. I've met really wonderful people. I've had a couple very good physician coaches, and I have a huge respect for what physician coaches do for their clients. So, Arpita, I applaud you for what you're doing for others. And I pivoted from clinical medicine. I had surgery on my hand, so I could no longer operate and do other necessary, functions in the office. So I thought now is my opportunity to spread my wings and help women, people, globally and on a much larger scale. So it's been a very exciting journey. So, Arpita, I really appreciated your comments in terms of, the way we identify with ourselves being, doctors. That's kind of like how we identify, and then we leave clinical medicine. And for some, there's a little bit of a void with, what do I do next? If you haven't put some, really good hobbies or other interests in place, it can feel very empty. So I'm sure you're working with a lot of clients that tell you that, and you work with them. But it's not all that. It's really been a wonderful, eye-opening experience. I mean, I'm having fun every single day. Never before did I do a podcast. I'm meeting people who I'd never have imagined have met, if I was still working as hard and long hours as I was. So it's really been a great journey the last 7 or 8 months. So
So
thanks for
Susan,
having me, Kim.
Oh, sure. And I have to say it's fascinating, because if you remember our phone call conversation,
Yeah.
I think I was just publishing my very first episode, because I recorded it with Dr. Todd Otten on Halloween. And if I talked to you the beginning of November, it was, when I was publishing the first one, and
Yeah.
I invited you to be on it, but we decided to wait some time because you were so new. You had just had your thumb surgery, and we wanted to see what would happen and where things, so we intentionally waited
Right.
some months
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see, what would evolve. So we'll let Arpita share a little more of her story, and then Susan, you can share a little more about what the transition has been like for you.
Sure.
Sure. Okay. Well, I think my story, I went into residency into peds knowing that I only wanted to work 2 or 3 days a week, because I wanted to be home with the kids. I was not that you're not family oriented if you don't do that, but just that's what I wanted to do. So I was very intentional about finding a job. So my first and second job out of residency were part-time jobs where I worked 2 days a week. Call was once a month. I had a very nice setup. And after about 8 years there, the senior partner was retiring and asked me, pretty much gave me the ultimatum to go full time to replace her. And I just didn't want to do that. And at the same time, my husband had opened his own medical practice in Virginia. And, we were kind of starting out and we don't have a lot of the business mindset and skill set. So we were learning significantly there, very steep learning curve. And so I decided that I would let that career go. Well, not let the career go in peds, that I would let that job go, and that I would continue to look for another part-time opportunity. But in the meantime, I would fill in my hours helping as much as I could with the office. And that kind of snowballed, obviously, into me turning into 80 hours a week of work at the office, more administratively, and not really finding anything that was what I was looking for with regards to peds. And so I think now when I reflect back, I know what happened was I was overworking as a way of avoiding those negative emotions that I was feeling about my worth and my value and what I was bringing and contributing to the family. And so I compensated for that by working a ton at the office, and it did not look good. It looked like me micromanaging people. It looked like me being angry with people. It looked like me being angry at home. It looked like me not having good relations in terms of interactions and communication with my husband. And so there was a lot of deterioration there. There was a lot of anger that had bubbled up in my life, a lot of resentment, a lot of just being generally not happy. And I had everything that you would think somebody would need to have to be happy in their life. We had, thankfully, lucky, healthy children, healthy family members, family close by. We could support ourselves. So it really wasn't making sense. And then COVID happened. Actually, before that, what I did is I started a locums business for peds locally here, which was nice because then I could practice when I wanted, where I wanted, how I wanted. And that gave me a little bit of joy back, but it still wasn't, something just wasn't right still. And then COVID happened, which made the locums business kind of go by the wayside. And we had to shut down our medical practice because that practices interventional spine care. So it's an elective procedure. So we shut the practice down for 8 weeks. We kept everybody on payroll. We weren't taking a paycheck. And when we reopened 8 weeks later, it was moving along, but by October, we had lost 100% of our staff. And that kind of really pushed me over the edge with regards to my anger, my resentment, my frustrations. And I started realizing the way I was thinking about things is that I was tired of my dependability really being dependent on that of other people. And so I called my best friend from residency and was like venting to her about how people suck and everybody is horrible and nobody cares. And she very kind of astutely helped me see that I wasn't showing up in a way that was dependable for my own children, because when they came home from school, they didn't know if they got angry, nasty mom, or if they got normal mom. And that was when the light bulb clicked, that I started to realize that how I was perceiving and thinking about things in my environment and my world was really how I was showing up in my own world for the people around me. And so that was really the incentive. And my daughter was a junior in high school when that happened. And so I started to quickly realize I had a couple years left to really cultivate a strong relationship with her so that when she left, we were still on good terms, that she'd want to be with us. She'd want to come home and spend time with us. And so that was really the incentive for me to start making a change and doing kind of what's led to me doing what I do now. So.
That's
Well, and
great.
thanks. I love the way you explain all that. It makes it very understandable, how you were thinking about things as it all happened. Susan, what would you like to share? What have the past months been like for you, from like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? And how has some things, how has that felt? Because now that we've all put, because I'm not practicing as a physical therapist, and I know even for myself, like my license is still current, but it's still like, well, what am I if I'm not a physical therapist,
Right.
and things like that. So
Right.
whatever you'd like to speak to, Susan.
Honestly, I'd started the pivoting experience, even before I had my surgery. Actually, I started to investigate things that I could do with my medical degree and my background. So, 2 years prior, I had reached out to a business coach and had several discussions with a business coach in terms of how to move forward. And they really were very helpful with, rewriting the resume and giving me some guidance on how to do research and where to look for other jobs. So I was already starting sort of the process of looking into other things that I could do. And in addition, just prior to me leaving and having my procedure, I went to a conference called the SEEK Conference in Chicago. It's something that's held every year. So any physician who may be interested in learning more about non-clinical jobs who may be watching this podcast, I would recommend that conference. It's a very intensive 2-day meeting, and they go through, all sorts of different job opportunities, professions, and you have the opportunity to meet with a lot of people too. So just a little
Sorry,
plug for
what's
this.
the acronym for? I've heard of it before, but just so they other
Yeah.
doctors might remember it or write it down. Do you know what the
Yeah.
acronym is for?
I probably should have looked that up. I don't remember exactly, but it's SEAK.
Okay.
So I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's very comprehensive. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I want to say it's through Becker's Health. It's somehow affiliated or linked with it, but I might be wrong there.
That I'm not sure of.
Okay. I'm sure if they look up SEAK conference in Chicago, it'll come up. Okay.
Yep.
Continue. Thank you.
So I'm very interested in industry and finding a position either with a biotech company or a pharmaceutical company. I think it'd be really interesting to see the other side of medicine with how drugs are developed, marketed, and obtain FDA approval. So that's where I'm focusing a lot of my efforts right now is something in women's health in biotech or in pharma. So it's very exciting. I've had many opportunities for networking. I recently went to the ACOG conference in San Francisco and met a lot of people there. And in addition to, job hunting, I'm also just enjoying being at home and being with the family and reconnecting with friends. I mean, this whole world opens up once you leave clinical medicine. It's amazing how much more there is out there into life that you don't realize until you get back into sort of the mainstream, Arpita, you could probably speak to that as well with what you hear from your clients. I mean, I don't want to come off, it's not, all gloom and doom, but it's kind of an awakening, actually. It's very welcoming and very positive.
Yeah, what I would add is that it is, like you said, we're like living in this fishbowl of what we think is normal. And that's what we have, like, that's all we know. And so until we do something a little bit different or like kind of jump out of that fishbowl to look around to see what the true normal is, stuck in the old ways of what our limits of what we know. It's so funny. Even I had another client I asked her, I said to list what is important to her, what's her why, what's her purpose. And number one, she said, okay, well, being a doctor is most important, like being able to help people and be a doctor, because I put a lot of time and energy into being able to do that. And then she started listing mom, friend, wife, daughter, like all the things. It was funny, actually. I think wife, I've done this before. Wife's not even on the list because we're just like, it comes so consumed and like, oh, too. And so just getting a moment there, that was such an excellent opportunity to have her reflect, to just say, okay, did you put these in? And I did ask her to put them in priority, but did you notice that your priority, you're putting your career and what you're meaning that career to mean about you, making that career mean about you above your personal relationships, like what truly is the most important priority for you in your life. And that, I think we have to start to revisit and to think about, because we get so stuck in the rat race of the day-to-day that we don't spend any time focusing on that. And that's truly what we're doing it all for in the first place. I think most people, at least. Yeah.
Learning and growing throughout your career is so important. And if, with the constraints of practicing medicine, there's so many other kind of administrative tasks that we didn't have many years ago, which really kind of bogs you down. And I think that plays a role with, feeling less creative. There's less time to be creative. There's less time, free time as well, at the end of the day. So, that plays a role too, with feeling kind of fulfilled and feel like you're doing enough for everyone. So this is an opportunity to step out and do something completely new. So,
and you know what? Education is similar as well, right? You can't do, like when my kids were little, the teachers could put on a little play or something, right, with the kids, or teach them French. My daughter's first grade teacher. And now it's dictated to that, right? Just like medicine, what they're going to teach, when they're going to teach it, how they're going to teach it, and it takes some of the creativity away. Susan, did you know your last patient was your last patient? When you saw, like, I was wondering how that felt for you emotionally, or have there been any challenging emotions during this transition?
I didn't take note of who my last patient was. I think that would have been too difficult. A lot of my patients who I had seen over the years came into the office and kind of had their last appointment. And that was really very special. And also, it was really, really special to have many patients send cards and, flowers to congratulate me on my next step and my next, path on my journey, which I really, really appreciate. And it was just so wonderful how supportive a lot of the patients were. But I'm forward thinking. I'm optimistic and trying to stay positive and in the present and moving forward. And it's so many wonderful things ahead. medicine aside, I've had the opportunity to take, like cooking classes and baking courses. And, these were the things that, you never really had time when you're working, but that now you find you have the time for more travel. As an example, we have several trips planned soon. I'm going to Portugal in a couple of weeks, which is a place I've always wanted to see, the Azores, because most of my patients would recommend that I visit the Azores. So I'm very much looking forward to have some of that flexibility to do other things. So I'm really very blessed. I feel very lucky, actually. So.
Oh, that's beautiful. I know you enjoy traveling, right, Arpita?
Oh, yes, I do. That's one of my favorite things in the world.
Yeah.
In Portugal, you're going to love it. I can give you some places to go and vineyards to see and et cetera, et cetera. But I think one of the things I want to just put in there is that I'm sure many people in the audience probably are familiar with the blue zone concepts and like the 9 pillars of what makes it, why we have these high concentration of centenarians across the world. In like, I think there's 5, maybe 7 now. They've increased the number where they found this. And these pillars of what they're trying to find common denominators amongst these 9 regions, or I'm sorry, 7 regions that have contributed to these people living to live these 100+ year lifespans or health spans. And the top 2 things, which was interesting, was number 1, having authentic connection, like serious authentic connection with other individuals. And that doesn't mean you have a party of 50 friends. It's like you have your tight circle of 3, 4, 5, maybe, that you can count on as your support system. And then number 2 is having a meaning or purpose in life. And that's where I think we get a little bit messed up as physicians, because we misunderstand or place what is truly our purpose in life. We think it's the doctoring only, and because that's what's making us be able to do and show that we're capable of doing things. But it's really, where do we have purpose in life? Like, what is your true compelling why that keeps you moving forward, that you really want to bring into the world? And and so having those 2 things is very, very important. And I think, like you said, the travel for me, that's a huge component of it. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to spend time with my kids when they have something coming up. I want to be able to for me, it's having my schedule be what I want it to be is one of the most important things, so that I can add in or take away the things that I love and don't love so much. So I think that's a big piece of it. It's just, sometimes it's hard for physicians to say yes and no to the things that what we're putting in our time nuggets is really in alignment with what we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. The common denominator is time. And I think as you just grow older, just in general, no matter what your profession is, you really honor your time more than you honor or look up to your work or, your salary or, so many other materialistic things. Time becomes more important and more valuable and carries huge weight, in your everyday, every week life. That was one thing I have to say that really propelled me into thinking about maybe making a transition, is really the loss of autonomy and losing, some say over sort of like my schedule and free time, and just the demands on medicine took away from some of my free time, my free time, because I was working and checking charts and all that. But I think Arpita, I think we may have lost her in a freeze on her Zoom,
I
if I'm
did
not
notice that,
mistaken,
so
but
hopefully she'll come back.
hopefully she'll come back. But just to sort of echo what she was saying, the free time is so important. And she,
Yeah,
said
that's
it,
okay.
hit it right on the nose. You're back. I'm glad you're
Oh,
back.
back
I
in.
apologize. I don't know what happened just now, but
Yeah.
Oh.
No, it's just a connection.
That's okay. So yeah, there we go. Okay. So I love when people talk about meaning and purpose, like superficially, a doctor might think, well, I'm supposed to help people or I'm supposed to be a doctor, and they might not understand what's behind that a little more deeply. So if you each want to speak to that, Arpita, because you brought it up, and then Susan, wondering as you transitioned, how that was for you, if you had another meaning and purpose in mind, or if you were okay sitting in the unknown and not being sure and being open to figuring out what that would hold for the future. So, Arpita?
So I think for me, when I transitioned out, like I said, I was in a lot of angst. I felt like I was forced to leave clinical practice because it wasn't meeting my schedule needs and how I wanted to live outside of work. And so it was funny. One of my friends and I were like, we talk about leaving medicine before you get coached and after you get coached, like how your mindset is. And so, after struggling with that for all these years, what I realized is that I am always going to be a doctor. I am still a doctor. And it doesn't mean that just because I'm not practicing clinically, that I don't carry that skill set and I don't have that title. I don't have all the knowledge base. I do. I just chose to shift it to do something else. I'm still healing people. I'm healing people in a different way. And that's the mindset that, like, when we talk about mindset shift and how you kind of start to accept and love what you're doing, it's recognizing that. And so I moved from believing that my value is only because I'm a doctor, and now I have to prove myself in this other way in order to own the fruits of what we're doing, to I am helping people in a completely different way. I'm always going to be a doctor. And I had the luxury of realizing that that phase of my life is complete, practicing clinically. And now I'm moving on to the next phase. And it doesn't make me any less of a person. It just allows me to really capture all the joy in all the different ways and experience all the things I want to experience. And this might end too. This might be a phase and I find something else. But right now, this is what's bringing me joy. So.
Yeah, I mean, I too see it as a continuum, but I also had, an orthopedic issue that needed to be taken care of. So it was sort of a double-edged sword. I knew that I was going to be feeling better with this really long recovery of the surgery that I had, but I was okay with sitting with uncertainty because I knew that I needed to heal. And I knew that, if I wanted to have a real, active, older life, I needed to have this sort of taken care of. So I think that was, my focus, but I wanted to continue working in medicine in some capacity. But, as you mentioned, Arpita, it was just, it's an extension of what we've been doing for a number of years. So on the one hand, yes, there was uncertainty, but I was okay with that because I think that eventually, where I land is where I'm supposed to be. So I'm actually very excited about the opportunities that are out there and how we can continue to use our education and our experience to help people broadly. So,
Well, and that's terrific. And it looks like you definitely did the work preparing yourself a couple years ahead of time, right? So you entered all of this with a good mindset. So that's good. And so Arpita, a long time ago, I think you had some kind of post and I thought you shared some things that were good and I actually wrote them down. So I'm just going to read them in case there was anything that you wanted to speak to. And I don't know if you'll even remember the post, but a few of your tips were to take your time, give yourself more time to meet your big goals, take massive action, continue to take action and don't give up, fail forward, be okay with failing and learning what doesn't work. Most successes are built on a pile of failure, so plan for at least 100 of them. And be anti-fragile. Being anti-fragile means your mistakes and failures make you stronger. They become your fuel to keep fighting and moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like now I'm saying you got to practice what you preach, right? And I think part of it is when for me personally, when we became doctors, we were very proficient at various skill sets. And so we knew what we were doing. We're the expert in the field. It's easy. And so when we try to do something different, it's very scary, quite frankly, because we have this perception that people think that we are perfect. We do things so well. We are successful in this manner and that manner. And if I do something different, am I going to fail? Am I going to fumble? Am I going to fall down? And that was a very hard thought and belief for me to overcome as well, because when I went out there to change roles and really put out there vulnerably all the things that had happened to me and going through in my life, I was scared that people are going to have their own thoughts about me, right? What are people going to think? And, that's where part of that mindset is, it doesn't matter what people think. People are allowed to be wrong about you. They're allowed to have their own opinions and be wrong about you. You got to keep on going. And I know I said it in that post, but similar, it's just like when we talk about babies learning to walk or kids learning to ride a bike, you can do it over and over. If you fall off the bike once, are you never going to do it again? right? We keep trying. And so that's what it is with the fails, with the other things, the new things that we're trying to do in our life. We got to keep failing. We got to keep failing. And you try it 100 times before let's make a decision to change gears or shift gears. But you have to put the effort in first. It's not going to just come. And that kind of adversity quotient is what I talk about too, is that you get to opt in to how much adversity you want to bring into your life. You can live a safe life, which is kind of boring, or you can live a life that has a lot more adversity in it because you're choosing to it, and you might have a more fulfilling, huge, enriched life that way. You know, you get to pick.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. And I was wondering if you'd each like to share any top tips you have for your colleagues, from seasoned physicians to medical students, or even those considering med school. Because again, there's people that are still staying in medicine and we need them to stay in medicine. So Susan, do you have any advice?
Oh boy, you just keep fighting, because you fight your whole life. And, patients, need clinical physicians, they need non-clinical physicians. Write to your legislator, get on the AMA, whatever organization, to keep up the fight, to include the patient in decisions, to you make sure patients have everything they need, including, medications, which are becoming more difficult for patients to get with a prior authorization, and, the list goes on. So, I think medicine is a wonderful career. I know, I would encourage any, young person to consider it. I think that in spite of the challenges and the changes, it's really, it's really wonderful. And there's so much that you can do, and you can continue to grow and learn. It's just having the courage to step out and seek something new, and just kind of go for it, no matter your age, your specialty. It's, it's really enlightening. It's just a period of growth from start to finish in medicine.
Well, thank you. And before Arpita goes, I will say I just recorded an episode with Dr. Gabe Sherbanu and Denise Weissman. And Gabe co-founded Medicine Forward, and Denise is part of the healthcare. She founded the Healthcare Reinvention Collaborative. And we talked about trust and hope, and how in a lot of healthcare systems that's been destroyed between, leadership and doctors, and, just all of the parts. But there are people out there trying to make a difference, right, in these organizations. And we're becoming like a network of networks, and we're finding there are things out there that are working. And it's building, finding a place to put that hope and that trust. So go ahead, Arpita.
Yeah, I think what I would add now is just that, we have to start to remember to listen to our inner voice. And I know we have fought and we have worked hard. I mean, we like I said, we own our medical practice. We're one of the few, if only, physician-owned medical practices in my area that I know about now. And it's hard. It is very hard with the challenges that we face with insurance, with Medicare, with all of the things. And it does make you question, like, what was the purpose of why I went into this and what I want to do and offer to my patients. And so, yes, there are other avenues you can think about. There are other ways you can look at this. I think what my nutshell nugget is, you have to listen to your heart and listen to your why. And sometimes that might say, you've given your time and now you want to do something else, and that's okay. Or you've given your time, I want to find a different way to do this. Or how do I just make this better because I love this so much? I just want to make it a little bit more palatable for me now because something has kind of gotten off kilter. And so it can show up in any way. It's just listening to that knowing, not just continuing to push through, even if you're close to retirement. Like, how do you enjoy each day as you have it? Because you don't know if that's going to be the last, right?
Right.
That's great. And giving yourself the white space to do it, right? That might be the most important thing, is if you're feeling confused, to just, however you need to do it, give yourself some time to figure things out, or reach out to a great coach, right? And do you have any quick suggestions for patients who wish to support their doctors? We could go Susan, then Arpita.
Oh boy. I think if a patient comes in with a list of questions, or, the list of their concerns, I think that's helpful to both the clinician and the patient to address everything. I think that's one way you can help your physician, and also having maybe an understanding of why your physician may be late entering the room. There can be other patients that need to be seen, or if it's a fragmented appointment, there can be someone who's sicker, next door and you don't realize. So, I think those two things come to mind, first, and there's certainly several others, but those are just a couple thoughts.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
I think for me, it's patients being educated, like learn about your plans, learn about what your benefits are with your plans, and stand up for yourselves with all of the carriers, private and Medicare. We so many denials and so many it's the game that they play, and we're paying for service. You need to be able to fight for the services that you're due to have. It's scary. We have friends that kind of went through this too, that it's almost like you have to have a doctor in a friend or family group in order to be able to advocate for yourself now, because people who don't know. So just educate yourself and find that colleague or that partner who can help advocate for you if you're having any issues.
Yeah, that's a
Great
really good
advice.
suggestion. Yeah.
So Susan, how can our listeners get in touch with you? I'll put your links in the show notes.
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great way. I frequent LinkedIn frequently, actually.
Okay, yeah.
Not every day.
So-
And my website is also on LinkedIn, thevoglermedical.com. That would be another way to contact me.
Okay, and how about you, Arpita?
So I'm on all the socials, even though I might not be as active on the socials, but I'm on LinkedIn as Arpita DePalma, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook as ThoughtWorkMD. And my website is www.thoughtworkmd.com. If anybody wants to reach out, and if they are interested in learning about coaching, they can set up a session with me right there on my website and go from there.
Okay, well, this is awesome. And thanks again for being my guest today, Arpita and Susan.
Thank you.
So
it
fun.
was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
And
you're
Arpita,
welcome.
it was
And I
great to
just
meet you.
love introducing people to each other. And I thought this would be a terrific pairing.
That's great.
So in closing, to move the needle in healthcare, we all need to raise our voices and we all need to care about each other. We already know that doctors need to care about patients. Patients need to care about doctors too. So stand up, doctors, and let's stand up for doctors.
That's great. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
You guys have a great day.